Hello everybody, and this is going to be my review of the film Interstellar. So, one word for Interstellar: mind-blowing. It's one of the best films I've ever seen. I'm going to definitely put it in my top 3. Don't know if it's my top 1 yet. It's Christopher Nolan's 9th feature-length film, and it was epic. And I went to see it the day after it came out, and it just blew my mind. And straight after you've watched it, you're trying to figure out what's gone on, and you're talking to people you've seen it with, and it's just amazing. I'm a big fan of Christopher Nolan. I've seen 7 of his 9 films. I just haven't seen Insomnia and Memento, which I'm going to get around to seeing. But he did his trademark again, which is messing with your mind. I don't know why he likes doing it. The Prestige, which is one of the best films I've ever seen. Again, it's in the top 3 films I've ever seen. Directed by Christopher Nolan as well. That's an epic as well, and it leaves your mind blown, which is very similar to Interstellar. I mean, if you've not seen The Prestige, you need to see it. It's so good, and it's got Christian Bale in, who's one of my favourite actors, and Hugh Jackman, and they're going against each other, and it's marvellous. Like The Prestige is Inception, and that also leaves your mind in a bit of a twist at the end. Well, Inception's a bit more popular, a lot more people are seeing Inception, and it's very similar to Interstellar, leaving you don't know what to think about. So, Interstellar, it's a space exploration film. I won't call it just that. I won't just label it as a sci-fi film. I mean, it says action adventure on IMDb and stuff like that, but I'd say it's quite dramatic. It's got a bit of drama behind it, and the story behind it, I think, is one of the best things about it. The relationship between Cooper, who's played by Matthew McConaughey, and his daughter Murphy. It does tug on your heartstrings, and you can relate to it, even though it's a fictional environment they're in, and it's set in I think 40 years or ish into the future, the film, and the science of the film, the actual events that take place to make the Earth run out of food is quite unclear unless you look deep into it. But what you get is they can only survive off corn, really. They're running out of food, and there's a lot of dust, which may be due to global warming, I'm not sure. But then, when you actually get into space, and the science behind it, it's quite fascinating. And I'm not keen on science myself. I hated physics in school. It was so boring, and it was so hard. But the science behind it does really interest you. I mean, the time dilation that's explained in it just blows your mind that something like that can actually happen. As well, a scientist called Kip Thorne worked on the film with Christopher Nolan and the producers and the writers, and his theory is to do with black holes and how they work and how it's shown in the film. And I've not really seen many black holes, but if the black hole depicted in Interstellar is real, it's quite scary. So I'll move on to the performance by Matthew McConaughey, and I really like Matthew McConaughey. I think he's a good actor. I mean, we've all seen his romantic comedy films. I mean, one of my favourites is How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. That's a typical Matthew McConaughey film. But Christopher Nolan said he saw his real potential when he saw him in Mud, which I haven't seen personally, but I've heard it's a really gritty film and it's worth a watch. But what I've seen Matthew McConaughey in, and what he's really good in, is True Detective. And that was an excellent TV series, and Matthew McConaughey was brilliant. He played the character of Rust Cole, who was called a detective, really well, and it showed you it could act. But Matthew McConaughey as Cooper, the character of Cooper he's a typical antagonist, really. You know, father of children, his wife has died, and he goes out to try and save the world, and you're on his side all the way through it. And I'll try not to spoil things, but there's a part of the film where you think Matthew McConaughey is a goner, and you do really start to get a bit worried for him. But it's alright, he doesn't die. As well, Anne Hathaway, this was the second time she's been in a Christopher Nolan film, obviously. She was in The Dark Knight Rises as Catwoman. And she was very good. She played Professor Brand, the daughter of another Professor Brand, who was played by Michael Caine, who again links up with Christopher Nolan. I think it's the sixth time they've linked up. And yeah, Anne Hathaway is very good again. She's got a short hair, which I think suits her personally. But moving on to something I've been wanting to talk about for a bit, and that's Hans Zimmer. And I think Hans Zimmer's a bit of an unsung hero. Not many people have heard of him, but if you have, you know who he is, and you know what he's capable of. But my expectations for Hans Zimmer, which are really, really high, they were really high for Interstellar, and he absolutely smashed them. The theme music, the soundtrack to Interstellar was remarkable, and when it got released publicly to buy, I downloaded it straight away and just listened to the soundtrack, and it brought back memories of the films. So I'd say to people, go watch Interstellar just to listen to the soundtrack. You've got the cornfield chase. That's a brilliant piece of music, and you've got the bit where Cooper, Matthew McConaughey, goes, and you've got the soundtrack, and it's called Stay, and it's such an emotional piece, and it's a very good listen to. So again, if you haven't listened or seen the film, just go and listen to the soundtrack. It's a really nice listen, and it's really epic, and it gets you in the mood. And my favourite scene in the film is when Cooper and Dr. Brand are trying to dock back to the space station with Ranger, a spaceship, and when they're trying to dock, and there's a great piece of music going really intense, really dramatic, and your heart starts beating really fast. You feel like you're there with them, and I think that's mainly down to the soundtrack by Hans Zimmer. And Hans Zimmer, he's got a great relationship with Christopher Nolan. He did it for 3 of the Dark Knight trilogies. He did it for Inception, and he's done it for so many other films. And he's such a great film composer, and I go and see films just because they've got his soundtrack in them. Some other stuff I'd like to talk about. In the film, they've got these robots, which I think they were used for were used by the Marines and stuff like that, and they're really advanced, and I think they're a bunch of fun. They're a bit like a modern day C-3PO, and one's called Kip, and one's called Case, and the puppeteer did a really good job with the robots. He did a really good job with Kip and Case, and basically you just want one as a pet, really. They were really good fun, and I do think the puppeteer did a really good job with them. But I can see why some people didn't like Interstellar. I mean, I personally didn't. I'm a massive Christopher Nolan fan, so I was always going to like it. But I can see why people weren't too fond of it. I mean, I went to watch it with a couple of friends, and the last hour of the film, it was confusing, and it did mess with your mind. So if you don't really like going to films and thinking all about them, then it might not be your cup of tea. But I mean, they enjoyed the film, like the first 2 hours, the dramatic scenes and things that were happening in it. They really enjoyed the first 2 hours. But the last hour, it just confused them, and that might have put them off a bit. But they said they enjoyed the film, so that's good. But no, I'd advise anyone, absolutely anyone, to go see Interstellar. It's a masterpiece, piece of art, really. And if you haven't seen any Christopher Nolan film, then I'd advise you go and see as many as you can, because he used to be an up-and-coming director now, but he's established himself, and he's one of the greats. So, my final rating on Interstellar, I gave it a 10, of course. It's a Christopher Nolan film. I mean, I think I gave every Christopher Nolan film a 10 on the IMDb rating. But if I had to give it like an accurate, purposeful score, I'd probably say 9.4 out of 10. Like, a few things could have been better. Could have made things a bit more clearer. But apart from that, it was a very well directed, very well acted, a superbly scored film, and just, it was beautiful to look at. So if you're ever stuck for something to watch in the future, you've got Interstellar on DVD, or now when it's still in cinema, you fancy going to watch it, go watch it. It's a really good watch, and it makes you think. This has been Sam. Thanks for listening. See you later.